Welcome to this week's installment of Constant Procession. In this episode, there's a brief update of my book, The Very Fine Light. Also in this podcast is an account of my visit to Mexico City a few years ago now to visit the site where the Virgin Mary appeared in the year 1531. I'm hearing from some readers that they plan to give gift copies of The Very Fine Light as Christmas presents this year. Just so you know, there is a quick and easy way for doing this on my book's Amazon.com page for ease when sending the book as a present. Plus, it will get to them very quickly. For those of you who haven't heard about it before, the book is about Randy Sparks, a fun-loving village employee who is always in trouble for telling it like it is, and the pushback he faces from the mayor, who is hiding a secret. And when combined with the village's pending bankruptcy, well, it creates a volatile chemistry that will make sparks fly. No pun intended, Randy. I'll read a bit from my book next week, but enough of this for now. Here is, as promised, my visit to Our Lady of Guadalupe Basilica and Shrine. The appearance of the Virgin Mary to St Juan Diego occurred at the Our Lady of Guadalupe apparition site in Mexico City in the year 1531. I visited this apparition site in Mexico a number of years ago now. The planning that went into this visit was somewhat elaborate. I had to massage an upcoming trip of mine to the West Coast from my East Coast location. I'll let you decide what guided my visit. The Virgin Mary was certainly my inspiration. My idea was to fly to this apparition site without an overnight layover. So through tons of planning, I created the logistics for making the trip happen. It would simply be a short visit between flights from my home in the East to the West Coast. In retrospect, it certainly was a miracle of planning. The idea was simple enough. I'd just break up a flight to the West Coast, rather than taking my usual desired preference for seeking out a direct flight. It was a bit offbeat, I will admit. The notion for this trip just sort of came up. I imagine due to some of my research for my first book, The Constant Procession, as I had been reading about the apparitions that occurred in Mexico 500 years ago, and wondered what the site was like in modern times. So when my travel opportunity struck, I decided to take this detour in order to get to Mexico City. A bonus is that I could take advantage of time zone changes from East Coast to West Coast, and that would give me several hours of extra time on the ground, which would work in my favor for lengthening my stopover to just under a full day in Mexico City. Now, though the world is shrinking with respect to traveling internationally, at that time, and still in many places today, visiting locations off the beaten path finds one having to navigate somewhat on blind faith. I knew that the reality of getting around a different country included the language barrier. I also knew having to use kilometers in estimating time for traveling to and from the airport could create possible confusion for me. To reduce this possible confusion for myself, I decided to find my way to the apparition site by hiring an airport limo service and doing it through one of the high-end international hotel chains that surround the airport, and requesting a driver who spoke English. Driving to the site offered a brief look-see at the population in Mexico City. But traffic had a universal feel of being slow, like most places in the world today. A first surprise for me was that my driver tried very hard to dissuade me from going to the site. He insisted that I would have a better experience if I went downtown to the ancient Aztec ruins. Well, I'm certain he was correct from a tourist's point of view. I found it strange that I would have to justify my desired destination to the driver I had paid. Following the conversation, which seemed to frustrate my driver quite a bit, I was kind of concerned as to whether he would return or not, although I had prearranged for a specific pickup time for getting back to the airport with my flight departing around 7:30 p.m. in order to sync up with my original trip destination. Well, I got out of the limo somewhat insecure about if the limo driver would actually come back, but I took it on faith that he would return and just moved on. With that, I was on the street in the Central American sunshine that seems to bleach everything. There was a carnival-like atmosphere on the street in front of the apparition site as I navigated the Spanish language signage, although basically I just followed the crowd. I was struck by all the street vendors' tents that were up against the shrine's fenced perimeter. It was a bit off-putting, what with all the trinket stands, but sadly I wasn't surprised. What would my experience be as I entered the grounds? I recalled something my wife told me, that when she as a teenager had come to this site, one recollection was seeing pilgrims on their knees crawling across the Our Lady of Guadalupe Plaza and up the hilltop. Perhaps my driver's challenge had some validity. Things suddenly felt very foreign to me. Nevertheless, I ignored those folks that were hawking their ware as I walked towards the main gate. But as I walked through the gate, though the sun beat down and there were no trees on the plaza, once I crossed that threshold of the main gate, I immediately felt a complete difference in the atmosphere from the hustle-bustle of the outside world. The arrival made my journey instantly rewarding. I knew I'd arrived at the place I sought from when my initial notion to travel here came to me over 1,000 miles away. I did not see anyone on their knees, although admittedly the day I visited was midweek and it was not a feast day, just what I'd call regular work day, so the crowds were not huge by anyone's standards. This made for a perfect day for me. I could get anywhere without wading through a massive crowd. Now, the size of the plaza once you enter through the gates is overwhelming. This is one big place. Don't hold it to me, for my calculations may be off a bit, but the total area of the Our Lady of Guadalupe footprint is about 50 acres, or 200 meters. I've read that on December 11th and 12th in the year 2009, there were 6.5 million people who visited this shrine. So you can imagine my initial impression as to the vastness of the grounds. I felt very disoriented because of the scale of the place. It made me want to find a small space to rest before continuing. My first stop was a chapel off to one side of the plaza and near the bottom of Tepeyac Hill. Wanting to take a pause to sort of get my grounding, I found my way to the Pocito Chapel, or the Well Chapel, a well that had been built over a stream that had suddenly appeared, and it was said back in the day to have had medicinal waters. After slowly going in, I relaxed, following a prayer inside. Then I wandered along the tree-lined walkways at the base of Tepeyac Hill until I finally got my bearings. I looked at a map I had brought along and oriented myself specifically to where I was in relation to the various meetings that took place between the Virgin Mary and St. Diego. It suddenly became easy for me to feel acclimated to this place. Now it seemed quiet. The people were respectful to other pilgrims who were here on this day. Linked on my website is a fantastic video I found online that is a great walking tour through this basilica and apparition complex. Coincidentally, it pretty much follows my route around this site. Strange, but very cool at the same time. And take a look at it, I know you'll enjoy it. As I continued walking around, I began to appreciate the pilgrimages of people from times past, as well as the dedication of pilgrims now here on this particular day. I'm unsure how many priests I saw, but it was very humbling to see people walk up to the priests who were very approachable, and before long, I would see that they were praying together. A number of individuals would stop priests, and I'm pretty sure they would make confessions on the spot. I also saw places filled with candles, little booths, for lack of a better word, and they were located everywhere. Then I climbed the stairs to the top of Tepeyac Hill, where St. Diego found the Castilian roses, just as the Virgin Mary said they would be, blooming in December. There is a shrine that stands on this spot where he found them, just as the Virgin Mary told him they would be. Also, the vista is quite breathtaking from atop Tepeyac Hill. I was amazed to see all of the foliage and flowers that adorn the sides of the hill itself. Looking away from the hill, I could see the vista of the city through the smog. This seemed quite unreal. My final stop on this all-too-brief visit was to experience the amazing new basilica, which was completed in the late 1960s and is designed to allow up to 10,000 pilgrims inside. And the high point of my visit was to go and see on the inside of this basilica St. Diego's cloak called a tilma, and on it is the famous impression of the Virgin Mary that she somehow placed on this piece of material. The cloak or tilma is made of a material that experts say should have decomposed hundreds of years ago, but it is still here with us today. I was transfixed when I saw the tilma with the Virgin Mary's impression on it. An amazing story with respect to the tilma is that back in the 1920s, it was housed in the old basilica. A terrorist planted a bomb close to this tilma in the year 1921. The bomb blew up, causing great damage to the interior of the old basilica, but the tilma survived undamaged. This journey for me was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I have traveled to other apparition sites across Europe, as I wrote about in my earlier book, and I plan to visit more apparition sites where the Virgin Mary has appeared, good Lord willing. I was at peace while on Tepeyac Hill and on the grounds and in the surrounding chapels and the basilica. I felt a relaxed peacefulness, and I felt very at home in this place, the site where the Queen of Peace tasked Juan Diego in the year 1531 to tell the local bishop at the time to build a chapel on this hill. It's reported that she said to St. Diego, quote, "It is my earnest wish that a temple be built here to my honor. I will demonstrate, I will manifest, I will give all my love, my compassion, my help, and my protection to the people. I am your merciful mother, the merciful mother of all of you who live united in this land, and of all mankind, of all those who love me, of those who cry to me, of those who seek me, and of those who have confidence in me. And here I will hear their weeping, their sorrow, and will remedy and alleviate all their multiple sufferings, necessities, and misfortunes." Unquote. So, this is my remembrance of that amazing visit. Sometimes in the future, perhaps, I will tell you of my leaving and meeting with my estranged driver. I was able to fly out as planned, but the journey after leaving the serenity of the Our Lady of Guadalupe Basilica and Shrine Complex is, well, a story in and of itself. Please visit my website and sign up to be on my mailing list, and let me know your thoughts. This is Nico Steves. I hope you enjoyed this installment. My book, The Very Fine Light, can be found using the title, The Very Fine Light, on Amazon.com. Please feel free to contact me at nicosteves.com. That's Nikos Steves, Steves.com. If you like this episode, and for more, share them with friends. This is Nico Steves. Thank you. See you next time.